not 15 months ago. This team looked like it was absolutely on fire with what the potential was going to be with Patrick Mahomes. They had a good year last year without Hunt there, but you look at the energizing effect that Mahomes and Hill had. Now that's gone. My good friend is a Chiefs fan, and he can't believe this. He thinks it's the right decision to have Hill off the team, but it sucks for him as a Chiefs fan. You lose Hunt, now you lose Hill. This league, with some of these players that have this history, there just has to be a better system of getting these things addressed before it becomes issues like this. And more importantly, you've got to protect this child.
You talked about 12 to 15 months ago. Tyreek Hill was making plays in the AFC Championship game in January. And now you look at this situation a few months ago, it was talked about that he was going to be in line for a record wide receiver deal. And now he potentially could be out of the league. We talk all the time when guys make mistakes, let guys rehabilitate. If they're sincere and they really want to make changes, give them a second chance. Well, Tyreek Hill has had his second chance, and he's blown it. We also talk all the time about not jumping the gun. Look, we didn't talk about this on the podcast. I sort of made a decision to take it out of the notes and not discuss it because we didn't have anything concrete at the time. There was no videotape. There was no audio recording a few weeks to even months ago. I think this story broke on a little bit after March, first week in March 5th, I think was the first police visit to the home. I had it in the notes then, but it was like, how are we really going to discuss this? We don't even know what's happening here. Is this some type of domestic that the child is being used at this point? But it's something we had to keep our eye on because it involved, and this is even far and beyond the Adrian Peterson situation with his son. You have a 3-year-old with a broken arm, and no one seems to be able to figure out how it happened. Now, all of a sudden, you have evidence. You have Tyreek Hill on tape discussing the fact that when his child cries, he punches him in the chest and beats him with a belt. And now it is completely believable that in those types of rage, that with a 3-year-old, it doesn't take much to knock them over, knock them into something, and potentially break their arm. If that is the case, he should be out of the league. And if he is cut by the Chiefs, if they do the right thing and they waive him and cut him, if another team picks them up, I hope this protest mentality that this country has on every other little thing that pisses them off, I hope it gets ramped up on that team to where their life is miserable to the point where every sponsor they have pulls out and they have nothing left until they make the right move and get rid of this guy. You've been given a second chance. And don't give me this BS about, well, a common person can make these mistakes and they get a second chance. If you have a good job and you are on the front page of your local paper as abusing a child or choking a pregnant woman or punching her in the face, you are not going to have a very good job for very long. You would get a job, maybe as like the sanitation department or something that no one else really wants, but you're not going to have a high profile, high paying job. Companies do background checks. They're going to ask you about this. They're going to want to know your arrest record. And they're certainly smart enough now to be able to Google you and to look at those type of things that are going to be out there about you. So this thing that gets put out there, and especially coming from TV analysts, and it seems to be a black and white type of issue, it's not. Anybody else in that position that would put themselves in that spot that has a job that has any type of an impact on another company, they're not going to hire somebody like that with that arrest record. So the NFL, where you have fans and you have sponsors, you can't have a guy like this on your team. Tyreek Hill got a second chance. He hasn't learned anything. Hell, Eric, he may even have gotten worse. He's beating up pregnant women and 3-year-old children. If he comes back in the league, I've never wished this before. I hope he has a devastating injury because I never want to see him again. He doesn't deserve to be in the league. This isn't somebody in his family in a fight like the Simmons situation where he's taking up for someone in his family and he strikes a woman. This is just abuse, and he's an abuser. And he picks on people that can't do anything to him. A pregnant woman and a child. He needs to be humbled. He needs to be done. He's had his chance to rehabilitate, and he's not learned his lesson. So I hope he's out of the league. All right, time for a short break. I need to calm down. When we come back, going to discuss the NBA playoffs. We thought we'd have a much clearer picture of the Western Conference. As of recording this show, we really don't yet, but we'll talk about why. We'll also talk about the Portland Trailblazers. Do they actually have a shot to make it to the NBA Finals this year? And then we'll also discuss the Eastern Conference, the 4 teams that we thought they're going to be matched up in a dream scenario for round 2. We'll talk about those matchups when we come back. All right, let's jump into the NBA playoff picture. Let's go to the Western Conference first. There's still some questions on this Western Conference right now, Eric, and what the matchups are going to be here when we get to round 2. Boy, it seemed like it was going to be Warriors-Rockets in round 2, and it felt like the Warriors had already made their arrangements, and now they get to make a trip back to L.A. for Game 6 as they let the Clippers come into Oracle and beat them by 8 points in Game 5 of this series. So was this just as simple, Eric, as the Warriors looking ahead to the Rockets? Or are there issues on this Warriors team that make you believe it could be the Rockets' time to knock the Warriors off?
I'm not really sure what to make of this first round series. I think there's a couple of things we saw. First of all, the other night, I don't feel like the Golden State Warriors really shot the ball well. I understand Kevin Durant had 45 points. I mean, Curry dropped in 24 and Thompson dropped in 22. But their efficiency numbers weren't what they normally are. I mean, Thompson was only 4 of 11 from 3, 9 of 20 overall, and Curry was less than 50% overall. So I just felt like, especially when you got to the second half of the game, a lot of the shots that they were taking from behind the arc just weren't falling, and they didn't gain that momentum that you often see at Oracle. That arena can get really loud really quickly when the Warriors go on this 6, 9, 12-point barrage that they can do. And it's just that those barrages never really came. They were holding it together, they were solid, but they never really came. But I do have to give the Clippers credit because here in this Game 5, I thought Harrell played a huge game. Coming off the bench, scoring 24 points. He was 11 of 14 from his field goal percentage was amazing. He just seemed to provide that spark the entire game. He played a really tough game. And then Gallinari poured in 26. So you had the guys like Green and Beverly, Shamet, guys that you would expect to play well. They played okay, but when you get Gallinari and Harrell, guys that you don't expect to be the all-stars necessarily for that roster, giving you production like that. And again, I really point to Harrell because as I watched that game, I felt like he was the firecracker for the Clippers all the way down the stretch. I mean, he just came up big time and time again. It felt like the Warriors, even at home, just couldn't overcome that hurdle. They never really got in control. Even when they came up and tied the game, they went on to make a few mistakes within 2 minutes after they tied the game and took the lead late in the fourth. The Clippers regained the lead and never gave it back up. It just seemed that they couldn't get over that hump, even with Durant scoring like he did. So chalk it up to a bad game. I think the Warriors are good for a couple of bad games. My fear is that this really does kick them in the teeth even more than Game 2 did, because now they realize, okay, we've got to get serious about this. We've got to shoot better. We've got to play better. We can't assume that we're just going to come out here and get to the NBA Finals and win the trophy. We've got to get through these games first. And I think that's what we're going to see in LA Friday night in Game 6. I think the Warriors close out this series.
They gave up a 31-point lead in this series, lost that game, and they really just got outshot by about 10% from the floor in Game 5, but they had more offensive rebounds. They had less turnovers. They shot the ball fairly close from the free throw line and the three-point line. They actually had 2 more threes than the Clippers, so they did a lot of the things that they should. They got killed on the inside. Harrell's been the spark plug for the Clippers really all year. And what they bring off the bench with Lou Williams and Harrell and just the energy that they bring with that second unit, that's why they just have such a good punch coming off the bench, because 2 of their main guys, they just bring in and they get to play minutes against some of your second unit when you take the starters out. Now, it's not as magnified in the playoffs as the regular season because the starters get more minutes, but those guys just are so important to the Clippers, and they come in fresh, and they just really have given the Warriors a lot of problems. What I see, Eric, from this Warriors team is just every other year, they talk about just flipping the switch. And now it seems like when they go to flip the switch, they just can't always seem to flip it quite the way that they used to. And I think some of that just has to do with the fact that this Warriors team was at their peak, was at their greatness because of this unselfish style. Even before Durant, it was who gets the best shot. It doesn't matter how many shot attempts somebody has. It doesn't matter it's whoever's hot and who's got the best shot. They bring Durant in. It's that same mentality. Everything is going great. Now you get to this year, and it's just a ton of question marks. Not only is it the last year at Oracle and they're moving, you have no idea what Durant's doing. You have no idea if Klay Thompson's going to be back. You have no idea what's going to happen with Draymond. Now, where you used to have one unit pulling all in one direction, now it's not quite like that. Yeah, they're sort of going in the same direction, and at times when they put the egos aside and just play, they do. But at other times, the distractions seem to kind of spray them out a little more where they're kind of all pulling in a different direction. And that's my fear when they play the Rockets, because the Rockets know exactly who they are. Everything funnels through James Harden. Everybody plays their role. Even Chris Paul knows his role in this team. He is not 1A anymore. He is definitely 2. It is James Harden is the clear number 1 guy, and everybody on that team plays their role very well. I don't see that as much from the Warriors, especially on the defensive side. A lot of lapses. A lot of times it just feels like, again, it's just the distractions catch up with this team. And that's really my concern for them when they get to round 2, when they are going to be a team that now they're going to have a few less days rest. The Rockets are going to be very rested, and they could very well come in and knock them off in game 1 at home. And now all of a sudden the Warriors are down 1-0 at home versus a very confident Rockets team, and they're going to have to figure out how to grind it out. And Eric, again, we talked about it with LeBron in Cleveland. These 1+1 deals, they are ruining franchises, because all they do is leave all these question marks. The whole issue with Draymond and KD earlier this year came from the fact that everybody knows just the way the contracts are signed, how KD is talking, that there's probably a better chance than not that he leaves the Warriors at this point. And I think that stress and that pressure, and when these teams get in those moments, a team like the Rockets really concern me a lot more, when the Rockets just seem to know exactly who they are. They have an identity, and I feel like at times the Warriors don't. The only pause I have on that is the fact that, again, the Warriors were up 31 points, and in game 5, they just simply got outshot after watching the Rockets team win. I don't know how much they watched through that game since they were probably getting ready, but you sort of just feel like they came out in that game like, okay, we can just go through the motions and we'll be playing the Rockets this weekend. And now all of a sudden they're heading back to LA versus a Clippers team that's got to be brimming with confidence at this point.
I think for me, Justin, with the Warriors, what it's going to come down to, and you're right, I mean, LeBron James, again, one of his legacy impacts on the game is how he transformed the way contracts are done, how he transformed the way that a star player can either run or ruin a franchise. And again, LeBron's my boy. I was just joking with one of my friends who listens to our podcast every week, and he's like, man, you guys find a way to bring it back to LeBron all the time. Even if he's not even part of the episode because the Lakers are out or whatever, you find a way to bring him back. Well, Mike, this is for you. I'm bringing it back to LeBron. I got to say, LeBron, one of his legacy things that I don't like is how he changed the game for the worse if you're looking at a team perspective. And so I agree with you. These 1-and-1s, these deals where the player has all the leverage and the team has no leverage, I think it stresses them out in new ways. It stresses the relationships with the players out. And you're hitting it right on the head. The locker room can't be the same if you have some guys who are superstars who it's like, well, maybe they'll be back next year and maybe they won't. How are you ever supposed to gain momentum as a team, as a unit? I mean, Justin, we've both been married a long time. We've got kids, we've got good marriages, but how would it be if in your marriage you kept signing a 1-and-1 deal with your wife? Like, it doesn't work that way. It's like, oh, well, honey, we'll do another year, but if I find something better, I'm out of here. It doesn't work that way. You're never going to have a close relationship because there's always that fear that it's going to be over. And so I think that has revolutionized the game. But I'll say this about the Warriors. Until they prove to me that they can't be the better team out of a 7-game stretch, because, yeah, if they don't shoot the ball well, they're going to lose sometimes. But if you give me the Warriors 7 games with the same team, I think the odds are still in their favor. And I think Kevin Durant's one of the best players in the league, if not the best player in the league overall, just because of what he can provide. I think LeBron actually has to work harder to score 45 points than Kevin Durant does. Durant is just amazing to me. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and even Draymond Green, until those guys can't make it through a 7-game series without winning 4 of them, I still got to take the Warriors in every series right now because, yeah, they're going to have these rough times, but I think ultimately they still have enough talent to always be the ones on top.
Yeah, in a 7-game series, you're right. It is tough to pick against them, and it's also, again, trying to put things into perspective. Yeah, they've had 2 losses, but in one of them, they did have a 31-point lead, so when they are engaged.
And that's lethargy, right?
Yeah.
31-point lead. A Warriors team like this should never, ever lose a 31-point lead.
No.
And I think they just quit. I think they just said, yeah, we got the game won. And the Clippers were like, well, we're not going to give up.
Yep. The Clippers just play hard. Those young guys, they play hard. And you talked about Harold, Lou Williams. They just play hard every minute that they're on the court. They don't stop. And in basketball, all it takes is you start getting a run, you chip away, you get a team that's just firing up bad shots, turning it over. All of a sudden, you get these huge spins in the game. And Eric, that kind of takes us to the next topic of what we saw happen in game 5 of the Thunder Blazers. Thunder up 15 in the fourth quarter of this game. A lot of that due to Russell Westbrook and how he was playing. But Westbrook giveth and Westbrook